So today is going to be all about how to read DU and LP. So we're not going to go super in depth. This is more of just the key pointers as loan officers, what we need to look out for. Or if we have, of course, our assistants or our assistants or our staff that's going to be helping us when we're running DU and LP. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first, of course, as loan officers, the first thing we always look at is, of course, looking at our preliminary recommendation, right? We see approve eligible, we kind of just bounce off, right? But we want to be able to look for the little extra items that are called out. A lot of the times us as loan officers, we kind of just look at this and we're like, okay, we're good to go. But we don't look at all the other little extra things that it's asking for. So just make sure that when you are running DU and LP that you're ensuring that your information is correct, your LTV, your housing ratio, your debt to income ratio, and that this is matching your Encompass. I've seen it happen before when we receive these and then loan amounts change or purchase price changes or something like that. And of course, this does not match. So we want to make sure that this is matching when you're actually submitting it. So it's matching to your current status of your loan. So if you ran it, let's say for a pre-approval, but your purchase price changes, you do need to rerun it again. That, your loan type is correct, your loan term is correct, what type of loan purpose and is correct in your note rate. So you always want to make sure you're taking a look at all that good stuff. So we're going to be focusing on preliminary recommendations, your mortgage information, your property information, credit and liabilities, employment and income, assets and funds. So that's what we're going to be focusing on when we're looking at whether we're looking at DU or LP. So first and foremost, again, you want, and under your risk eligibility, you want to take a look at this section here. Let me see if I can put the volume. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Probably not. Actually, I don't think it has volume. But basically here you want to, this is just a short little video. When you're scrolling through, you want to take a look at this section here. Your findings, you want to make sure that your findings are, it's going to let you know when it must close on or before. So it's going to give you an expiration date. And you want to take a look at, especially that here, when it must close by, and taking a look at your what type of findings you're finding here. The reason for that is you want to make sure that as you're looking at, because we've had realtors or lenders that have brought us deals that basically will state that, they just bought it. You got to keep in mind, they cannot take any actions until a minimum of 6 months after they have become owners. So this will let you know that as well. The next thing you want to take a look at is, of course, like I mentioned, your mortgage information. You want to make sure that your LTV is matching, your housing, your front end and your back end ratios are matching. Your loan amount is correct. Again, we have to adjust, and every time we adjust, you have to run DU or LP to make sure it's actually going to pass. That your value is updated. And of course, what type of loan that you're doing. If your loan type is, goes from FHA to conventional, we of course have to rerun that. Another thing you want to look at right now, we haven't seen too many of these, but you sometimes do, is reviewing your appraisal. Make sure if you see the little green check mark here, you're going to see a green check mark for appraisal waiver. So of course that means that you can have an appraisal waiver on a refi or a purchase sometimes. But do keep in mind, if your loan terms change, you want to make sure you still get that appraisal waiver. We have had situations where we would get appraisal waivers and then something would change. Loan amount would increase, value would decrease, anything like that, and your appraisal waiver was invalidated. So what does that mean? You now have to order an appraisal. So just make sure you guys are taking a look at that and making sure that you're coordinating with your processor to make sure that if anything changes, loan amount or value, that if you have an appraisal waiver, it's not invalidated, because we have seen it happen. Another thing you want to double check is making sure what your credit and liabilities is requesting. When marking the debt to be paid off, DU is going to notate what items that we need to provide. It can be evidence of payoff, or it can be, it can just be a statement, since we're paying it most likely a lot of the times through the transaction, right? So we are going to need that statement showing the balance. Let's say the balance. Sorry guys, I'm muting you guys because you guys log on and we can hear you. So let's say the balance here on your DU is based on the credit that you ran at 2,320, but your statement is higher. You got to keep in mind, we're going to have to pay that higher balance. Again, if it's lower, same thing. We're going to end up paying the lower balance, just as long as the statement is current. When it comes to credits and liabilities, also, please be sure that you guys are taking a look at any disputes. We had a situation where we had a charge off that was in dispute. Keep in mind that when something is in dispute, it is not going against their credit. So because of that, it can give you an inaccurate FICO score. So whenever you're doing, even if it's conventional, a lot of the times we're discussing, FHA, but when we had a situation where it was a conventional refinance, and they had a debt. Luckily, the debt was not too high. It was about $160 or something like that, but it was in dispute. And because of that, when we reran credit and had it removed from dispute, it dropped the FICO score. So of course, that's going to, make or break your deal. So be sure that you're looking at the disputes and what your DU is calling out on that dispute. If it tells you it must be paid off or dispute must be removed, then you're going to have to get that done before you can move your deal forward. So it's a huge thing to do, is because a lot of times we look at charge-offs and collections, and ignore them. So remember, disputes, if your DU is asking for it to be paid off or cleared, you're going to have your client remove the dispute and rerun credit, and of course, rerun DU. What I have here. I'll slow it down. So, anybody have any questions so far? Okay, so I'm gonna keep going because I just want to make sure, if anybody has any questions, you guys can let me know. I'm sorry, these things keep kind of freezing here. Employment and income, same thing here. Anytime you have any type of employment, whether it's self-employed, you have overtime, bonuses, bonus income or anything like that, it's going to let you know what we need. You got to make sure that you're calculating it based on that, because sometimes it's going to tell you previous 2 years or 1 year and year to date. It can actually break that down for you that way. So right here, like it's stating, you need to get an employment verification, include all year-to-date earnings as well as prior year earnings if W-2 is not provided. So you got to make sure that you're reading what it's asking you for. A lot of the times you can go off of 1 year and year to date. Sometimes it's asking you for previous 2 years, sometimes year to date and previous 2 years. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that, because when the file goes into underwriting, we're basing it on DU findings, of course. So biggest ones are overtime, bonus, and commission. So you want to make sure you have the correct income calculated. Now, if you have a situation where a borrower has gone from a position where they were, let's say, just an employee that wasn't like a supervisor or a manager, but they've now moved into management position and they're going to be making more money and it's projected for them to make more money, and you're seeing that pattern. Keep that in mind that, you know, we can definitely try to work with you on that and justify the pattern of the extra income and the increase in pay. I have a situation right now where a borrower made $7,000 in 2020, $32,000 in 2021, and about $35,000 year to date in commissions. He went from, you know, an employee like a trainee to now being a full sales rep. So I'm going to justify that his income is subject to continue at that 35, you know, 33,000 a year with his commissions, because he has now, you know, changed in position from, you know, a trainee to now being a full sales rep, and that's his projected outcome of his income. So, you know, you want to make sure that you're taking a look at that. When you're looking at Social Security pension income, take a look at what it's asking you for. So it is going to give you either an or and. If it's asking you, because a lot of times I do, you know, of course, when we're underwriting, we do get people saying, or our LO saying, well, why do you need that? Well, DU, it's asking for it. If it's saying I need proof of current receipt and the award letter, guess what? We're going to have to provide it, because even if you want to fight your underwriter on it, consider post-closing. They're still going to ask for it. So just keep that in mind. If you see, for instance, here where it says, if it's a supplemental income, we need a copy of the SSA award letter and proof of receipt. And it will sometimes tell you, we need a 3-year continuance. Let's say child support, alimony, retirement, you know, permanent disability, SSA, a lot of the times they will ask for a 3-year continuance. So just keep this in mind if you guys are taking a look at different types of employments like Social Security, like pensions, you know, all that. Your DU is going to tell you what it means. In this case, with Social Security, what does it say? Proof of current receipt or Social Security award letter. So you can provide either or. Sometimes they will say the 1099 form. So whatever you can provide, as long as it meets these 2 requirements, because remember, it does say or. In this section, it says and. Why? Because it's mentioning if it's a survivor's benefit, a retirement, anything like that. You guys want to make sure you're falling within the bracket of what type of income you're giving your borrower. Same thing here with retirement. And as you can see, with retirement or pension, it states, or government annuities, it says one of the following. So if you are having, you know, some borrowers don't keep all of their pension statements. Some borrowers just keep their 1099 form that they receive at the end of the year for their pension, or they get a statement at the beginning of the year. It just states one of the following. Now, you can give a copy of financial or bank statements account, you know, to prove that they're receiving, but then keep in mind, you cannot gross it up. So basically, you want to make sure, again, that you do have a 3-year continuance. Majority of the time with retirement and pension, what we do in underwriting is we'll double check for you if the retirement account that they have meets the criteria, but a lot of the time it's going to be a different type of retirement accounts where we need it. I've rarely seen us request a 3-year continuance on a pension, but just keep that in mind. You do want to make sure that if it is asking for that 3-year continuance, you try to find some way to document that. Now, it does say it's not required unless the retirement is coming from a 401k IRA or a SEP. So do keep that in mind. If you, I've had people that tell me, hey, well, I have this, you know, they have savings, I can create income and show a 3-year continuance. Cool, document it. If you can document it, we can use that income. Sorry, it's like going crazy. Second job, this is super important, guys. When you do have a second job, you must have a 2-year history of holding a second employment to be able to use that. Again, if you're using a secondary employment and you're inputting into Encompass as an additional employment, it is going to pick it up as a second job, and it's going to tell you what you need. So it'll let you know we need the most recent pay stubs and W-2s covering the most recent 2 years. So in the guideline, it will say, refer to the selling guideline. Borrowers with less than 2-year history of receiving the second job, we need to verify all that stuff, right? Now, I had a client who had always had a history of a second job, but she kind of changed her jobs depending on the seasons, right? So she was a cook in one and a server in another, but she worked at one restaurant for one period, then another restaurant for another period. You can use that as long as a 2-year history is there for that second job. And just keep in mind, you know, you just want to make sure that you're calculating it properly and making sure that it's kind of, you know, consistent, that she or he has had a second employment. So we want to make sure that we have that 2-year history for that second job to be able to use it. Your other types of incomes, just make sure that you guys are completing and verifying your sources of incomes. In Encompass, as you guys know, you don't put Social Security, pension on the top portion anymore. There's a bottom portion in Encompass that calls out for Social Security, pension, child support, you know, anything like that. So foster care. So now in Encompass, it actually separates it from your, you know, your top portion. I think it's your page 2 or 3 where your employment is. I think it's 2, where you can see the top portion where you have to put the employer's information, all that. You want to scroll towards the bottom and you'll see it in Encompass where it says additional income. This is where you would put your Social Security and your pension. You want to make sure you're putting it on there because you do want to make sure that Encompass is picking it up correctly when you're running DU or LP. Assets and liability, I'm sorry, assets. Of course, a lot of the times it'll say with the most recent 1-month period, but do keep in mind your underwriter is always going to ask for 2 months bank statements. I know that I do have here, you know, assets to be verified with 1 or 2 months. So just keep in mind, let's say you have a 401k. 401ks a lot of the times are not monthly. They're usually, you know, sometimes I've seen annual, I've seen semi-annually, and I've seen quarterly. Of course, if it's annually, we only get 1, semi-annually, we only get 2, quarterly, we get 4. So just make sure that it lands within that recent period because everything does have an expiration date, right? So with your assets, you can start with 1-month bank statement, but you are going to need a minimum of 2 before you close. So just keep that in mind. I know that DU does read 1 month, but like I said, keep in mind your underwriter is definitely going to ask you for 2. Verifying your gift funds. Gift funds, if you put it on the appropriate page, in this instance, gift funds are now on page 4 of your IRLA. It's kind of right before your demographic. It's going to say gifts from what source, right? So you want to put the source, which usually is either a gift of cash or a gift of equity. Always put no because if they're going to wire it directly to escrow, it hasn't been deposited. So you want to put no. And then you won't sometimes pick up that source if it does say deposited. If it does say deposited, then you would put it on your page 3, which is actually where your assets are because it's already in the borrower's bank account. But keep in mind, you are going to have to trace those funds, right? So a lot of the times, again, just the same here, it'll say and or with whatever it's asking you for the gift funds. So depending on the guideline, whether it's FHA or conventional, a lot of the times it's going to ask for the source of funds, whether it's 1-month bank statements from the giftor, or if If it's being wired directly to escrow, they want to see the receipt and they want your gift letter to match the bank account number from the giftor. So, you know, it just really depends on what type of loan you're doing. So just keep that in mind when you're running to UNLP to verify what it's asking for the gift. So here, what does it say? Obtain a signed gift letter and document the transfer of funds and ensure the gift comes from the eligible source. So what does your gift letter have? Your gift letter is going to have a section where it states who the money's coming from, the name of the person, the bank account, whether it's Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, and the bank account number. So again, depends on your underwriter. You just want to try to get as detailed as possible. Just complete your letter. And then what happens, of course, is they want to see the receipt of the money that was deposited into escrow. When you see that, you're going to be able to source that same, match that same account. And just make sure when you guys are doing gifts that it's penny for penny, because then you're going to have to change your gift letter if they change the gift amount. Funds. Keep in mind, guys, if you do have required funds to close. So this right here is just more showing required to be verified. So another thing that I do notice a lot of the times when we're running, DU and LP is that I'm just trying to go to the front here, see if I did a screenshot of that really quick. Okay, I probably didn't. Sorry about that, guys. So whenever you have DU or LP, make sure you guys are also verifying if it's asking you for funds required to close or funds required to be verified. When you see this, you want to make sure that your borrower, so just keep this in mind, let's say it's a purchase and their cash to close with their down payment, let's say is 10,000 plus their closing cost 12. But your DU or LP is asking you for funds to be verified for reserves is another 14. So let's just round up the numbers for cash to close and closing cost to 25,000. And it's asking you for 14,746. You're now going to need 14,746.17 and $25,000 available for your borrower to be able to close this deal. So always keep in mind when you're looking at your funds, if it's asking you for reserves. I can tell you that right now we have a deal where the agent or the loan officer involved did not notice this. And unfortunately, we have not been able to move forward. And it's a refinance. So, luckily we're not holding up any selling agents or sellers or listing agents. But we are now on hold because we don't have sufficient funds to close. We don't have enough reserves to be able to meet the criteria of closing this deal. So if it's a purchase, super important, to make sure that you're looking at your funds to close requirements, because it's going to tell you how much you need for reserves as well. Now we're going to go ahead and get into any questions, anybody on DU? That was just DU. Let me see. All right, so let me see, question. ¿Qué, Carlitos? Second job. You want to unmute?
Hola.
Hola.
So on the second job, if the borrower is about to turn the 2 years, having the second job, can we count the money, or we need to wait until the 2 years are?
So I've seen it where they have given it to us, where as long as by the time we close, they have turned that 2 years. I've seen the underwriter give you a pass.
Yeah, like
so there could be, it's case by case, of course, but yeah, I've seen it happen where We just recently had one where they were like, I think it was like a week away from turning 2 years, and we were able to use that second job funds because like a week and a day after we were gonna fund, so they met that 2-year mark. So yeah, I've seen it where it's allowed.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, so as we all know, I did not do an FHA one here. Usually that one's DU, so I did not put that one out there, but I might add it to the next one just because it does look a little bit different than the regular DU on here. So it's a little bit more kind of scattered, but it's kind of the same concept. But I'm gonna get into LP. LP is everything is pretty much going to be the same. It's just going to look a little bit different. Again, you want to just verify your information. With LP, your purchase eligibility and your risk class must read except eligible. So again, I've been a culprit of that, and I'm going to be honest. I used to see eligible except, and I would move on, right? So you want to make sure you're not doing that. You're at least taking a look at the important aspects of, again, it's literally a quick eyeball on the most important stuff so that you know what your underwriter is going to ask. When you're ready for that up front, like for instance, actually, I'm going to give you guys a great example. I had an underwriter ask for 12-month consecutive payments on the child support, as well as a 3-year continuance. And we had a processor saying, but why? Well, our DU was asking for it. So in order for that loan to be sold off, you're going to have to provide that condition. So if you're prepared for that type of stuff up front, you know now that, hey, they're going to ask for it. I might as well just get that condition going, because some borrowers can take, 5 minutes, some borrowers can take 5 days to get us conditions, right? So at least we're prepared for the condition ahead of time once we run DU and LP. So again, you want to go ahead and make sure your LTV is correct and it's matching your Encompass, your DTI as well. Your housing ratio, which is your front end, and your debt ratio, which is your back end, is matching. Your income is matching. If it's a sale, your sales price with, your loan purpose or your loan amount. So you always want to make sure that all that is matching to be able to make sure that you're actually providing the underwriter the correct DU or LP. Again, just like DU, we want to focus on the assessment summary, your representation and warranty, your asset details, employment and income, assets and reserves, credit and liabilities, and your property and appraisal. So getting into your asset assessments and summary. So here again, your purchase eligibility, your assessment summary, you just want to make sure that's eligible. Your risk class is accept. As long as you got these two, now you want to just go in and review and basically see where you stand. For your collateral, this is where your appraisal waiver would show here, whether it's eligible or not. But you can also take a look at it here where it says property and appraisal messages. It will let you know whether it's eligible or not for an appraisal waiver. Again, just like DU or LP, if your terms change, loan amount, anything like that, it can invalidate the appraisal waiver. So just make sure you guys are taking a look at that if anything changes on your loan transaction. Employment and income. A lot of people like to use LP for self-employed borrowers. So please keep in mind that you're actually, even if you get a LP, accept, it may still require you getting 2 years of taxes. So just make sure that you're taking a look at that section under the employment where it says that it must be supported by signed, completed federal taxes. For the business returns, if applicable, because sometimes it's Schedule C, so you're not technically going to have 1120s. If the business is in existence of 5 years or more, then you can do the most recent year. If it's in existence of 5 years, of less than 5 years, you are now going to be asked for 2 years. So keep that in mind. If they do have an LLC, a corporation, an incorporation, we do verify on the Secretary of State how long they've been in business. So please make sure you guys are taking a look at that. You know, we had a situation where we had a borrower come in who was, you know, really young to have, you know, that would have meant that at 14, they started a business. I mean, we gotta make sense of it, right? I mean, and nowadays, 14-year-olds are really, really smart. They probably do start businesses, but it does have to make sense, right? So, you know, it just has to make sense with what your DU and LP and your borrower. Make sure that it makes sense for them. Assets and reserves. Same here, as long as you guys are making sure that you're, you know, it's going to show whether you're required to have reserves or not. I've had situations where I run DU and on that file, it's asking me, I'm sorry, on DU, it's asking me for reserves, but the borrower doesn't really have any. So I run LP and it's not asking me for reserves. And it's asking me for pretty much the same documentation with the difference that it's not asking me for reserves. If it's more beneficial to your borrower, you can change the type of, you know, underwriting that you're doing, whether it's DU or LP. But do keep in mind, if you are sourcing any type of funds, especially with LP, it is going to ask you to make sure what type of funds do you need to source. As you can see, some people are like, oh, it's less than $2,000, so we can ignore it. No, if it's telling you here to source funds that are exceeding $1,875, guess what? That $2,000 deposit must be sourced. So it does say, which is 50% of your total qualifying monthly income. Most of the time when you do LP, it's going to say if it's more than 50% of their income, we need to know where that money came from. So just do keep that in mind if you guys are seeing that, to go ahead and look at this section here under assets and reserves to make sure it's telling you what type of source of fund, what funds you need to source. Yes, Carlitos, unmute.
Oh, okay. It was, question is regarding when the borrower has self-employed, but on the Secretary of the State, on the LLC, it shows like they were registered like 3 years ago. But they've been doing this for so long because they were first like a DBA or a sole proprietorship, and then they decided to, you know, make things a little bit more straight.
Legitimate.
So how does that work? I mean,
so I've had it happen where, like, for instance, me, that's exactly my case. I opened up my incorporation just last year, but I've had that DBA for about 7-8 years. So I've had the situation where they kind of ask for the CPA letter and they'll accept it. I've had it where they ask for your license, because usually you do have to have a license as a realtor. No, of course, you know, as a loan officer, we don't really, I mean, we do carry a license, right? But what I mean is like let's say they're a hairdresser or something like that. Or I've also had it where they've asked for the DBA paper. So it just really depends. It's case by case. But we do check the Secretary of State just to make sure if that company has been run for at least 5 years, or we request to see evidence. The majority of the time, I'm going to tell you, it's a CPA letter. So it's usually as long as their CPA is accounting for the fact that they've been a self-employed borrower for a minimum of 5 years.
And that will make then to request only 1 year taxes?
Yeah, but just make sure that you are just taking a look at your LP to make sure that it's not asking you for any additional documentation. Because most of the time it does read like this. This is how I see it all the time, where it says, but I've seen it where it's like a huge paragraph and it says something different. So just make sure you read that section where it says what it's requiring, you know, more than five years or more, most recent tax year, less than 5 years, most recent 2 years. So just make sure you're reading that. If you do come across something like that, shoot it over to me and Daryl, and we can just break it down for you and let you know if we would require something else. Because you guys know, you know, we do have a loan scenario desk here.
Okay.
So just make sure you guys don't be afraid to ask ahead of time, because God forbid it's a sale and you guys get into escrow and something happens. So you guys have, you have open doors here. You can call and ask us as well as the underwriter or shoot us an email. So
Thank
I know case by case, we're always gonna have something different. So if you see something different, show it to us and we'll walk you through it.
If you say something, if you see something, say something.
Yes, if you see something, say something, because every case is always going to be different, and we can have a self-employed borrower who is no longer self-employed, or you know what I mean? So there's always different scenarios that we can play out. So that's why it's much better for you guys, if you do have a case that comes up that it's a little bit different, it's a little bit off, hey, by all means, you can pick up the phone or shoot us an email and we're going to help you out. The majority of the time your DU, as long as you guys are inputting, because remember, your DU and LP is only going to spit out the information that you inputted, right? If you're inputting information that's incorrect, your DU and LP is not going to guide you the correct way if you're not telling it the truth, right? So a lot of us kind of just like to put in numbers in the moment where we're in front of a client, but as long as we update it later and we run our DU and LP, we can find our answers on them. But yes, case by case, if you guys come to us and say, hey, this is a little different than what I've seen, can you help me out? By all means, we'll definitely be there to assist you guys. So far, any questions that you guys might have with as far as assets and income and reserves? All right, so credits and liabilities. When you guys are marking off anything that's being either paid or omitted, just like DU, it's going to ask you for the same items, right? To go ahead and provide the evidence to support the omission, right? Again, we now usually don't mark off like certain debt to be omitted. We let DU or LP let us know if it requires it or not. But always keep in mind, we want to make sure that we do have we want to make sure that we are reading and reviewing the items that we've actually omitted or put to pay off. One, two, again, just like DU, make sure if you guys are getting notations on any type of charge off or dispute that might show up. So just make sure you guys are keeping an eye out for that stuff under the credits and liability messages, because you want to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. Like I was mentioning earlier about that dispute, that file was a bit of a nightmare having to figure out that dispute because it wasn't such a big balance, but it made a big impact. So we want to make sure that we're meeting all these requirements ahead of time. So that was pretty much it for today, guys. Anybody have any questions? I slow it down because I know I talk fast.
When are we going to lunch with you?
Tráiganme, yo como.
Y me meten a mí. Y también a mí me invitan.
Bueno, tiene que incluir tequila.
Y Carlito nos paga. Carlito nos paga porque no ha venido a visitarnos.
I invite you all. Puro sándwiches.
Subway.
Okay, stop. This is recording. Bye.
Thank you so much, Jael. Muy bueno, me encantó, ¿oíste?
Thank you, thank you. A la siguiente le voy a agregar FHA. So next time I'll add FHA so you guys can see how it looks a little bit different. Like I said, it's all the same concept. It's just kind of guiding through the biggest things. Make sure you're looking at your assets, your income, your liabilities. All those are super important to know what you guys are looking for and what your DU and LP is asking for. I promise you guys, if you guys look at this ahead of time, even if you browse through, you'll find the things that the conditions you're going to get no matter what. And then that way you guys can be able to pre-prepare. Let's say you submitted it and it already went to underwriting. not a big deal. Start preparing then to be able to tell your clients, hey, this is what's gonna come up and we're gonna need this. Start looking for all that stuff. You know what I mean? A lot of the times, you know, when you're doing a pre-qual, you already run the URLP because most of the realtors want to ask for it, right? I mean, let's be honest, what realtor really knows how to read DU and LP? You know, if us loan officers skip through it, they do too. They all want to just see the DU accept. So at least we pre-prepare then for our file to be ready to go. The more prepared you are, the less conditions you have, the faster you'll close.
Another question.
Yes.
Are you building a library of these recordings, or how can we have access on the future, or, you know,
Yes.
any day?
I am. So it's actually David. What David does is after I do the classes, he trims them down. So this craziness that happened after with the tequila will get trimmed down, but then you guys can be able to go back and look at them. So yes, we'll definitely have a library for them.
Cool, thank you.
You're very welcome. So anybody, any questions? So that was pretty good. Thank you guys so much for attending. Again, we do have a bunch of classes coming up. Next week we have, I don't remember right now, but we do have the mortgage company coming out on the 20th. And it is going to be via Zoom, but if you guys want to attend in person, she said she's going to bring food and prizes. So I know we all like to have that, right? So if you guys are going to attend in person, shoot me a message, let me know, or hit the accept on the calendar. Let me know you guys are coming in person because she does want a head count. And that's for next Thursday, the 20th. And of course, we do have, I believe the 18th was supposed to be another Encompass class. For anybody who's onboarding and still learning Encompass, but I'll double check that. But again, I am shooting out the calendar invites. So if you guys are, you know, welcome to accept if you want to show up, or, you know, if you've already gone through it and you feel good about it, you can decline it. If you need a refresher, you know, come back. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jael. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jael.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye, bye. Gracias, bye.